guys, welcome back to the Hoopty Haybaler. Today we are in the kitchen and we are going to be doing a tutorial on bone broth. We have had some requests for how we do some of the basic stuff that we do around here that not only saves us money, but it gives us a better end product than I can get at the store. So we are going to use stuff that otherwise would have gone either into the garbage or to the compost pile or would have been thrown right to the chickens. And we are going to use that, our scraps, and we are going to get a product that is shelf stable, that we don't have to worry about taking up freezer space, and it's going to be really good for us. So let's get right into it. You can freeze your broth. We are going to can our broth and make it shelf stable because I need more room in my freezer. Peppercorns, salt, and just a little bit of apple cider vinegar to really draw all the goodness out of these bones. We are just going to take these wings, start, and dump them right in here. And then our bags of, this is just a bag of bone pieces and scraps, vegetable scraps. We are going to fill this roaster full. That's actually a smoked carcass that adds fabulous flavor. These are some garden scraps. Might be about all we're going to get in there this time. And I just try to get it to fit so I can get it covered with water, and I want to be able to get my lid on. I don't have room for this one, so we're going to have to use this one. But now that we've got all the stuff we want to use in our Nesco, I'm going to add a good deal of salt. And a splash of apple cider vinegar. And I would just add a few peppercorns. If you have garlic or you want more spices or herbs in your broth, you can do that. We like to keep ours pretty bland, so that way when we use it in cooking, it kind of takes on the flavor of whatever you're cooking. And then you just cover it with water. We are going to need more water. That go in right away. And we might have to go back to the sink a couple of times because, like I said, this one is pretty full today. We're making a mess. It's okay. That's what I'm good at. And maybe we'll start there. As this stuff warms up, it'll break down a little bit. I had some cloves, some garlic, some heads of garlic in the fridge that needed to be used up. So we are going to use them up. Look at that. If I can get them to sprout like this in the garden, like I can in the fridge, we'll have a decent enough garlic harvest this year. I'm just kind of crushing them so that some of that oil and the flavor can get out a little better. So this will probably be over a couple of days because I'm going to let this go for probably 12 to 24-ish hours. And then from there, what I do is I will turn it off and let it cool off so that I can handle it without burning myself. Because if I can, I will ask my husband about that. And then once it's cool, we're going to run it through a strainer. So we're going to strain it so I'm not too worried about any little garlic papers or anything ending up in there. So now we're just going to put the lid on this and let it go. It'll be in here for probably 12, 24-ish hours, and then we'll pull it out, strain it, and put it in the fridge. And we'll go from there. So this has been going for a little while now. You can see the veggies are cooking down. We've got some color to our water, and what were raw frozen wings are getting there. So it's got a long ways to go, but I just wanted to kind of give you a little update. So this has been going now for about 16 hours. I've had it cooling down for a little bit so that I could handle some of the stuff. And now we are going to strain this and continue on with our broth journey. We've got a bowl for our broth, which we're going to strain. And we've got a bowl for our scraps, which will go to the chickens. This is an example of what our end product is going to be. I wanted to mention yesterday, and I forgot, that this can be done if you have like an Instapot. This can be done on high pressure for about 3 hours, and it'll be done. As we've come across some of these bones, here's, ooh, it's still a little warm. But you can see these bones are just falling right apart. They just brittle, real soft now, and that's a good thing. That's what I'm looking for. And so I know I'm ready to go. So we're going to pull some of our big pieces out of here, and we're going to strain what's left. And I'm just kind of pushing some of the broth out of those scraps. You don't have to use vegetable scraps if you don't want to. I have made some where I wanted even more of a basic chicken broth. And so then I don't add the veggies. I just add in my chicken carcasses and continue that way. But we just like the little extra that the veggie scraps add in. Then I'm not making a chicken broth and a veggie broth. So these chicken bones in here are they're just falling apart. They're just brittle. Even on some of these bigger guys here, like you can just see, it just falls apart. Real brittle. We've extracted quite a bit of that goodness in those bones, so that's what I'm looking for. See the steam? That's right. Yep, that bowl. I just left this in there to try to keep some of those pieces of chicken off the bottom. Try to help keep it from scorching because it was in there for such a long time. Now the temperature was low, but maybe that's just me. See the steam? That's right. Very hot. That's right. You can already kind of see some of the fat starting to separate around the edges. And that's a good thing because I want to scrape that off before I can it. Because then I typically tend to have better sealing rates with my lids. So I'm going to put a lid on this bowl and put it in the fridge. And I'm going to get a smaller bowl for what's left in our container. To let that fat separate so we can skim it off the top, and you'll actually see it'll come up to the top and you can just scrape it off with a spoon. I feed that to my dogs with their dog food. It's an occasional little treat for them. It's not like they get it all the time. It's not really enough to cause even too much stomach upset with these guys. So, but yeah, nothing goes to waste here. So we'll get a lid for this, get it in the fridge, and we'll see you guys back when we're ready. Broth is considered a low acid food, so we need to have a pressure canner in order to preserve that safely. You can use a water bath canner for things like jellies and high acid foods. Like your tomatoes and stuff can, for the most part, be ran through your water bath canner. But things like meat and broth and vegetables require a pressure canner in order to make them safe. And so we are going to find our broth, chicken broth, right here. Skim off fat. Bring stock to a boil in a large stock pot. Okay, so we're going to bring that back to a boil in our stock pot, and then we're going to get our jars ready to go. See if I can make a mess. That is why I wear my apron. And so there is, you know, we did strain this, but there is still some bits on the bottom. You can keep that out if you'd like. It doesn't hurt anything. It's just because I didn't run it through something really fine. And I think I'm going to keep that aside. Oh my! And I'm going to give that to our dogs. Let's get this started here. So it was taking a little longer for this to come to a boil than I anticipated, and I was afraid my jars would get too cold, and I don't want them to crack when I put the broth in them. So I have them filled with just enough water to kind of keep them from tipping over. And they are in here, in my canner, in the canner water, and the canner is just kind of turned on low just to keep it nice and warm. Means our jars are good and warm. So hopefully we won't have any shock. Because if you have shock, you can break your jars. And I do not want glass all over my kitchen. Alright. So this is just kind of my system here in my kitchen due to setup and whatnot. So now we are going to fill our jars. Our recipe calls for 1 inch of headspace. So that means we are going to fill up to, this one's got a chip. See, you always got to look at your jars and make sure nothing's chipped. So we are going to fill up to 1 inch headspace. One question I seem to get a lot when people ask me about canning these days is whether or not you have to sanitize jars and boil lid. If you are going to process your jars for more than 10 minutes, you do not need to sterilize your jars. If you are canning something like jam or jelly, which only calls for like 5 or 9 or 10 minutes, then you would need to sterilize your jars. got our jars with the correct level of headspace in here. We're going to take a clean rag, and we're just going to, it's a clean damp rag, and we're just going to wipe our rims off. They are quite hot. And this is because we don't want anything in between this seal and our rim. We want that to get a real good seal on there. So we don't want any grease or any particles left on there. We're going to get our lids popped on here. Dog hair on that one. And we're going to put our bands on. Finger tight. We don't want them to be too tight, but they've got to be tight enough. And some sourdough left over on the fingers. While we let that canner come up to a boil, we are going to put some dinner together, and we are going to have stuffing and rabbit tonight. So we are going to chop some onions together real quick and get that in the Dutch oven. And we're going to pull some celery out of the freezer and throw that in as well. And just get this rolling while we let that canner do its thing. Gotta open this up. It would have been smart. I would have opened it this way, and then I could have vacuum sealed it again, because I don't think I need quite the whole thing. But that's alright. We'll just put this in a Ziploc, throw it back in the freezer. And I do not have a lick of bread in the house, so we are gonna make some bag stuffing for today. Gotta give yourself grace once in a while. Alright. It was nice to have broth in different size jars. So this recipe calls for 2 cups, which is a pint. And if I only had quarts, I would have tons of leftovers, which might not get used up. So that's why I like to have some in pints and some in quarts. That way, whatever my recipe calls for, I have. Just see the steam starting to come out of that vent pipe. Once we have a steady stream of steam, we will set our timer for 10 minutes and we will let that vent for 10 minutes to make sure that all the air gets out of the canner. Okay, so now you can see there's a real good steady stream coming out of there, and my timer has been on for almost 5 minutes already. So we're going to vent for about 5 more minutes, and then we're going to put our weight on it and continue on. Okay, so our timer just went off. We have been venting for 10 minutes. So we are ready to put our weight on, and we are going to process for 25 minutes for our quarts at 10 pounds of pressure. So now we're going to let this come up to pressure, and when this jiggles for the first time is when we are going to start counting down our time. So we're going to let this come to pressure, and while this is coming to pressure, we're going to work on finishing dinner. And we just have this half a cup of broth left over from our canning escapades today, so I'm just going to dump that in. Rabbit is known to be fairly lean, so it's not going to have a lot of extra fat to go around. So I'm going to get this all coated and figure out how we're going to prepare this rabbit. This rabbit that we're cooking today, I just butchered on Friday. So he is good and fresh. He lived a really good life while he was here. I don't think he even knew that the end was coming, which is ultimately the end goal for any animal that we produce here on the farm. we go. So now we can start our timer for 25 minutes. And I have been progressively turning this temperature down because I don't want our stuff to siphon. So now we're going to make sure that our weight jiggles 1 to 3 times every minute. There we go. And we're going to continue processing these. We've got 25 minutes to go, and we'll see you on the upside of that. So now that we have processed that at our 10 pounds of pressure for 25 minutes, we are going to turn the heat off and we are going to leave it. You want that pressure to come down naturally. You do not ever want to try to take the lid off or cool it down quicker. So we're going to turn the heat off and we are going to leave it until that gauge reads 0. And then after the gauge reads 0, we will take our weight off and take our stuff out of the canner. So our gauge has reached 0 and we are ready to take the weight off and get our jars out of here. There we go. I like to put mine in the corner here. You want to put them in a place that is going to be draft free and they can be undisturbed for just about 16 hours or so. So now we need our jar lifter. There we have it. So now we'll let those sit over here. As they cool, the lids will seal and you'll hear that vacuum pop that everybody's looking for. But there we have it. I think we're going to have a beautiful rabbit dinner. Now that everything is washed and drying and getting ready to be put away. These have been out of the canner for about 16 hours now. I took our rings off. We'll check our seals. So now I'll wash these up, get all this lime off of there from our water. We've got hard water. And from there, they'll go on the pantry shelf where they'll be shelf stable, no refrigeration required, for about 18 months or so is what they suggest. But there we have it. You have homemade chicken bone broth that is going to be far better than anything you can get in the store for less, and you're going to have no waste because you're using all the scraps that you otherwise would have thrown in the garbage. So thanks for coming along with us as we made this together, and we'll catch you a different time.